Hi, Bhuvika. We can start the session. You are still muted. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Pak Deden. Let me start first. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening,
It's
ma'am.
yeah. Thank you for coming tonight and willing to learn together. I hope you are all healthy and always happy. And it would be great if you can open your camera, stay muted, and welcome to the webinar. And thank you for our speaker, and welcome to Pak Deden as well. Please introduce myself first. My name is Vika Tresnawati, and I will be guiding our event tonight. Before we begin, let's welcome our speaker, Jatana, and then Pak Deden. For all of you, please make sure to type your name and your region so we can get to know each other. And then we will now provide a brief overview of our public speaking session, an outline from Mr. Dadan to introduce Kelas Kreatif Indonesia, or we usually call KKI. To, to Pak Dadan or Mr. Dadan, the time is yours.
Thank you, Bhuvika. Good evening, Ibu and Bapa. Jatana, good morning to you. I think we are in different region, yeah. So we have different time zone. Thank you very much, Ibu Bapa, for attending the session this evening. I'm so excited to learn from Jatana tonight about the education technology. Hopefully, the session will give us insight on how to integrate the technology to engage our learner. Yeah. So please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dadan. I'm from Kelas Kreatif Indonesia. And then please allow me to introduce about our community because we might have some new learning partners joining our session this evening. Okay, so Ibu Vika, can you see my screen now? I hope I
It's still loading, Pak Dadan.
still
Yes.
loading. Okay.
Yeah, now it's fine. Yes, you can make it bigger. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Ibu Bapa, our session was 2 weeks ago with Professor Puji Astuti talking about cooperative learning, and today we have different topic talking about bridging language learning and technology for engagement. So basically, from Georgetown University, Jatana, you will be the third presenters before we have the other two presenting with different topics. Yeah. So Ibu and Bapak, Komunitas Pendidik Kelas Kreatif Indonesia is under Kelas Kreatif Indonesia Foundation. It is a personal learning community or personal learning network or community of practice. It was established in 2008 under the name of Education Development Project in Bandung, and then changed into Kelas Kreatif in 2018 and in 2020 becoming Komunitas Pendidik Kelas Kreatif Indonesia. So Komunitas Pendidik Kelas Kreatif Indonesia is part of Yayasan Kelas Kreatif Indonesia, as I mentioned to you before. The community comprises members or learning partners, such as teachers, lecturers, and tutors with over, in Instagram, we have 10,000. Fortunately, we just reached that number. But in the WhatsApp group, perhaps around 9,000 educators currently participating. One of the core visions of this community is to provide an informal collaboration-based professional development platform for educators to share, discuss, learn, and grow together. And the expectation is that all of us will become lifelong learners, reflecting on our teaching practices and conducting research on creative, innovative, and interactive learning theories, strategies, and methods, implementing them in the classroom. And the ultimate goal is to create an inspiring learning environment. So we have three or more social media. Number one, we have Instagram. You can connect us through Instagram. The second one, we have Facebook. And then we have WhatsApp. But most of the activities happening in the WhatsApp and Instagram. And the journey so far, so in 2024, we participated in PKGBI, so Kelas Kreatif Indonesia sent uh, 37 trainers for PKGBI program batch 1, and hopefully we can continue the program in 2025 ya Ibu and Bapak. And then the second one, we also publish lots of educational books, and many of them shared for free, the digital version. And then we also part of the uh, book writing released by the Ministry of Education, especially for the high school levels. And this is the pengurus of Kelas Kreatif Indonesia Foundation. And then Ibu and Bapak, Kelas Kreatif Indonesia is like, let's say, fully supported by Kakak Edulid Indonesia. So if Kelas Kreatif Indonesia more to the community base, Kakak Edulid Indonesia is more to the company training. So if your institution, your schools, your community wants to have fun and interactive training, you can contact us through direct message in Instagram or contact the admin of the WhatsApp group. And then current and upcoming events. So we just closed the registration for Rita Kusma Literacy Award, and it will be announced. The winner will be announced on Monday. So I hope one of the participants here will become the winner of the award. Yeah. And then on Wednesday, we are going to have one webinar, Enhancing Learning with Visible Thinking Routine. So I'm going we are going to invite also an excellent speaker to lead the session on the visible thinking routines. I think that's it, Ibu Vika, for the introduction about Kelas Kreatif Indonesia. Ibu Bapak, semangat belajar bersama, and hope we can learn together, yeah, with Jitana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Pak Dadan. Now let us listen to the presentation from our speaker for more valuable information and insights. But before that, please allow me to introduce our speaker. So for today, Jatana Andrade from Washington, D.C. She graduated she graduated from Research Assistant at Assessment and Evaluation Language Resource at Georgetown University, where she is currently developing and facilitating a StarTalk online course for teachers and critical languages. And then Jatana is also currently pursuing her Master of Science in Applied Linguistics at Georgetown, and also she also serves as the president of the Georgetown Linguistic Students Association for the academic year 2024 to 2025. So to Jatana Andrade, please join, and the time is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vika and Dadan. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen while I start talking. So please let me know if you guys can see my screen. Can everyone see it okay? Perfect.
Yes,
awesome.
It's fine. Okay.
Thank you, Vika. Awesome. So yeah, my name is Jatana. As Vika said, I'm currently a master's student at Georgetown University. But my background is in curriculum development, specifically in the e-learning space. I started working right in the middle of COVID, so I have a lot of experience creating learning content for all ages, but specifically in a digital space. So I'm really excited to share with you guys some information about student engagement and how we can foster it and really enhance it with a lot of different technology tools that we have at our disposal today. So to get started here, I just want to show you guys a brief overview of what I plan to talk about. Feel free to ask questions at any time in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. But I'm going to start off kind of conceptually talking about what is learner engagement, what does it look like, what are kind of the things to look out for and the things associated with it, including this thing called willingness to communicate. And then I want to talk about what technology can do for learners learner engagement, sorry. So how can we enhance it? What are our options technology-wise for assisting excuse me, learner engagement? And then finally, I want to highlight some tools that you guys can use. And I'll share a few resources as well with you guys. As Fika mentioned, I was part of a Star Talk program, which was a professional development for teachers, teaching them how to integrate more technology into their classroom. And one of the really great things that came out of that was this shared resource of technology tools. So lots of different language teachers from all over the US came together and created this big spreadsheet of tools that they enjoy, they like to use, and maybe how even they use them. So I have a copy of that we can share, and feel free for you guys to add anything to it as well. It's an open resource. So yes, that's the plan for today. So before we really get into the nitty-gritty of it, I'd love to start out with a question posed to you guys. So how do you know your students are engaged? What do you look out for? Feel free to put any answers in the chat. I'd love to take a look at them before we get started. Is it maybe completing an assignment? Is it raising their hand or speaking in class? What do you guys really look out for? I'll give you guys just a minute. Responding to and asking questions, beautiful. Active participation, love that. There's lots of different ways to be actively participating. Questions, again, wonderful. Responding to the instruction, yeah, that can look very different too, depending on what kind of lesson we're doing. Awesome, love that. Active in the class activity, perfect. Beautiful, yes. Completing activities is always a really surefire way to know someone's engaged, hopefully, right? Being a good collaborator, that's a really good one. That's a great answer. When they listen attentively to the story and ask questions, focus and energy, disagreeing to what's mentioned. That's a really interesting one. I love that. Engagement can definitely be, you know, positive agreeing or disagreeing, right? You have to know what's going on to know you don't like it, right? Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much for all of that. This really highlighted some of like the dimensions of engagement and, you know, the different ways that learners can present their engagement to everyone. So thank you all so much for giving those things. So let's go ahead and get started. Keeping all of those wonderful examples in mind. So I really want to start out by just kind of briefly explaining why we as educators care about engagement. Really, to simply put it, learners who aren't engaged aren't learning. I'm sure we've all been in a situation where we've had to do something, but maybe we don't care about it, or we're not interested in it, or it's just something that has to be done. And we're able to do the task, but we don't really remember it afterwards. It's not really something that sticks with us. We might not even remember doing it after a while. And the same principle applies to our learners and their learning experience, right? If they're not engaged, they're not going to remember it. Nothing's going to stick. So we really need to make sure that that's something that we're fostering for our students. And research shows that learners with high levels of engagement are more likely to produce in the target language during activities in class. Learners with high engagement are also more likely to create opportunities for high quality language learning for themselves, whether that's participating a lot in class or seeking out different peers in their classroom to do activities with and communicate with, or even going out into the target language community and finding more authentic opportunities to do their language practice. They're really seeking out those opportunities for themselves. So it's really good to foster that when we can. But at the same time, it can be really different, right? All of our students are different people with different personalities and things that they're interested in. So it's really difficult to make sure all of our students are 100% fully engaged at any given moment during class. So rather than that being the goal, I like to say that the goal is to create a positive environment that includes a lot of opportunities to increase learner engagement, no matter where they're starting out at. Which can hopefully increase their willingness to communicate and produce more language in the classroom. So now that we have kind of a goal outlined, I'd love to kind of define learner engagement for everyone. So when we're talking about learner engagement, we're referring to some action that comes from, or hopefully comes from, a learner's drive to learn, or even just do the activity. That's our definition that comes from Mercer and Dornay, the one that I personally really enjoy. And something else that we have to kind of remember when we're talking about engagement is that engagement and motivation are not the same thing. We generally consider engagement to be this action piece and motivation to be one of those drivers, right? But it's not the only one. It's not a prerequisite for engagement. Students can be like fully engaged in an activity or a topic without, having that long-term goal of, learning in the subject. So that's something that's a little bit different, but can definitely help engagement. But understanding how engagement works at different levels can help us as educators create better learning experiences with authentic engagement from our learners. So remember here, the goal isn't to have our students just kind of go through the motions or have this kind of blind compliance and complete activities. We really want to see their different kinds of engagement from our students, whether that be cognitive, behavioral, affective. We just want to see them engaging with our material in lots of different ways. And we can take this definition a little bit further. We need to kind of break engagement down into a few pieces, and that's where this multidimensional model of engagement comes in. It breaks it down into 4 specific pieces: cognitive, behavioral, affective, and social engagement. So let's break it down. The cognitive engagement is all about mental effort, or the mental processes that are involved in second language acquisition. Think about things like attention, focus, a student's alertness. One of my favorite examples of cognitive engagement are these things called language-related episodes, or where learners are kind of discussing or even questioning their own language production with their peers or their teacher. Behavioral engagement is the degree and quality of the learner's participation. So this includes learner effort, persistence, and active involvement in the learning activities. And this can be, as big as completing activities and being engaged that way, or maybe just responding to instructions, nodding, asking questions, disagreeing with what your teacher says. Affective engagement, or sometimes called emotional engagement. These are shows of both positive emotions like interest, enthusiasm, curiosity, but also maybe more negative emotions like anxiety that might present themselves in language learning activities. Seeing both, can indicate that a student is engaged. It doesn't just have to be the positive ones. And finally, social engagement refers to the relationships among the learners and their patterns of interaction and collaboration. So some examples of this can include providing feedback to one another, listening to one another, asking questions with one another, or disagreeing with each other. There's lots of different ways these can all present. And something to keep in mind too is that these types of engagement, they overlap, they interact with each other, and they manifest differently in different students. So it's really important to know kind of the basics of what we're looking for, but to keep an open mind to see how they might present in different students. But ultimately, from like this multi-dimensional kind of perspective, the real main, kind of juice of it is that we don't just want our students to just show up for class, right? They need to be mentally involved, emotionally connected, actively participating and interacting with others. That's our main goal. And there's lots of different ways to look out for that. Another concept that I think is important or helpful to talk about when we talk about learner engagement is this idea of willingness to communicate. It's a pretty straightforward concept. It's a willingness to communicate is really just the student's willingness to engage, communicate, or produce in the target language. This is something that researchers call an individual difference, meaning that it varies between learners. And it's not a static trait. Right? So we may have that like one student in class that always raises their hand and is always so excited to participate. But even in students like that, willingness to communicate isn't always a fixed trait. It fluctuates. So a student might be quiet in one lesson, but really highly engaged in another. And this can depend on the topic, their peers, or the activity. You know, if they're paired up with a classmate that they are just best buds with, they might be a little bit more willing to communicate with them and complete the activity with them. Or if, you know, we're talking about their absolute favorite thing in class that day, they might be a little bit more willing to participate or willing to communicate in the target language than when you guys are talking about maybe something they're not as interested in. So, like I said, willingness to communicate not only fluctuates person to person, but within an individual student, it can fluctuate between activities, between topics, or even between their peers, depending on who they're interacting with. So a really, you know, kind of good way to foster willingness to communicate is to kind of increase engagement. When learners feel really comfortable and interested, they're more likely to participate. And another good thing is to encourage mistake making. We know from research that students benefit from interacting with their peers in the target language. And I know sometimes it's a common worry that students will learn each other's mistakes and then replicate them. But research indicates that's not what actually goes on. Often students learn from each other's mistakes rather than repeating them. So part of this engagement piece might also be creating an environment that reminds students it's okay to make mistakes when they're learning a new language. They're not going to be perfect at it. Their first few goes at it, or even like their 1,000th go at it. They just need to be able to make the mistakes so we can understand, you know, where the breakdown is happening and what's going on. So now that we have some kind of general concepts, I'd like to bring the technology piece in. So knowing what we do about learner engagement, what can technology do to help us, right? And technology is a really big term. There's a lot of different ways that it can be presented in the classroom or manifest in a particular lesson. So I'm going to give kind of broad strokes, and then I'm going to give you some more examples and then some really specific tools to kind of talk about this technology piece. So technology can be a really good thing. It can provide opportunities for students to showcase all 4 types of engagement that we've discussed, particularly by lowering the affective variables that might impede students from having some willingness to communicate. Think like maybe anxiety or just the fast-paced nature that a language classroom can sometimes take. So if we can lower those affective barriers and offer flexible participation options, technology gives our students more control over how they interact with our learning materials, with you, with their peers, and overall the target language. So this flexibility or this like choice on how they can interact with the materials can also help increase their willingness to communicate, because learners can then choose the method that feels most comfortable to them at that particular moment. It also kind of, depending on the tool, can help the learning and the communication go at the student's pace, rather than, you know, a pace that's too fast or too slow. So over time, These options and this participation can help build confidence and help students engage more actively on a regular basis. Another really great thing that technology can do, kind of from the more teacher side of things, is it can help teachers kind of be able to see different types of engagement from their students at any given moment, which can then allow for more opportunities for the student or for the teacher to provide feedback, for the activity in the technological tool to provide feedback, their peers to provide feedback, or for the teacher to just provide, more general support for their students. So whether a student is participating through writing or speaking or some sort of interactive task through technology, oftentimes these tools make their engagement a little bit more visible, which makes it easier to assess their involvement and their progress. That makes sense? Perfect. Alrighty. So what exactly does that look like? I'll give some broad examples here before I really focus on two specific tools. So for students with maybe a lower willingness to communicate or maybe prefer indirect communication, things like online discussion boards or messaging apps, chat rooms, can give them time to process their responses before continuing. So maybe if they feel a little less confident, they maybe need a little bit more time to process the input before they respond. These kinds of tools provide those options for them, which is great. So tools like that can look like Padlet, like Jamboard or Miro, but also things like WhatsApp have been really, really great at, facilitating conversations between students in lots of different ways. Collaborative tools like Google Docs also can kind of be like Padlet, or any sort of like shared space where people can, add when they want to. These can also help students ease into communication by working with their peers still, but again, at their own pace and maybe with a little bit less anxiety, a less fear about, making a mistake in that language, in that new language. Gamification has also become a really, really popular tool in the technology sphere, which is just when learning activities kind of take on these elements of traditionally like entertainment games. So think about tools like Kahoot or maybe Genially. They provide kind of a little bit of extra fun or maybe even challenge to the language learning environment, which can appeal to your students more like affective engagement. Or even their social engagement. If, they want to be really competitive or interact differently with their peers, a game can kind of facilitate that. Or even the cognitive aspect of engagement, if they're interacting with the language material in a way that's maybe very different from, their other activities in the classroom, that's a really great way to kind of get students to see the target language through another lens, or maybe just interact with it in a different way. Give them a little bit of an extra challenge. I'm personally a big fan of gamified learning. That's one of the main areas that I study, so I'm happy to answer more questions about gamification or like game-based learning later on. But another great tool that we have is augmented reality and virtual reality tools. These experiences can immerse learners in real-world scenarios where they might need to communicate in the target language, but again, in that lower pressure way and at their own pace. I've seen this done in a lot of different ways. There's simulations for like everyday activities in a target language, like going to the grocery store or buying a train ticket. Or there's also like, for example, a lot of museums and botanic gardens have virtual reality tours now. And I've seen teachers use those tools to create activities with their students. I know a teacher that teaches Russian, and she uses the Hermitage Museum's virtual reality tour. to create like a guided tour experience for her students. So she gives a tour of a certain section of the museum, and then she asks students to pick another section of the museum to create a tour for the rest of the students, which they then present, and all the students in the class can vote and see which tour they liked the best. So there's a lot of different ways that you can implement these tools, both in a physical classroom, an online classroom, and a hybrid situation as well. Alrighty. So moving to two specific tools that I'd like to highlight. I picked these tools because they're relatively easy to use, and they generally are free or are on a freemium model, which means most of the tools are free, but some are behind a paywall, or once you reach a certain point, it's behind a paywall. But generally, you can do a lot with the free versions. And the first one is Padlet. This one has been around for a long time, but it's gone through a pretty big upgrade recently. I'm falling more in love with it personally, day to day. But Padlet is a collaborative digital board where students can engage in a lot of different ways. Often teachers will post some sort of question or prompt, and students can respond either in like writing a text, you can post images or GIFs, you can link videos, you can have voice or like video recordings. You can even have students respond to polls in Padlet. So this really kind of highlights like the flexibility that technology can provide students. It allows learners to kind of choose how they want to interact with the learning material, making it maybe a little bit easier for teachers to recognize different forms of engagement, especially maybe from quieter students. And those quieter students might have less of a barrier to actually like speak their mind when they're not face to face with someone in particular. And aside from posting, students can comment on each other's posts, both with like physical text writing, and they can also leave emoji reactions, which can also be fun, and another small way that they can show that they're engaged with the material and their peers. And like I said, since the disappearing, I guess, of Jamboard, Padlet has made a lot of updates and improvements to its software. So they have lots of different layouts, a lot of different templates that you can use. They also have an AI tool that can help you create a board. The AI tool, I believe, can even help you create like sample responses for students, which can be a great thing for, kind of modeling for our students, scaffolding even. And one of my favorite things about Padlet, just from like a logistics usability perspective, is that students don't need to create an account to access your boards or contribute to them. All they need is the link. They can type their name in and they can start contributing. I know sometimes just having students create an account can be a really time-consuming task. So it's nice that they don't make you do that. Padlet also has, from kind of the teacher perspective, something that's nice. They have some basic analytics that are accessible in the free version. So if you want to see like an activity log to see maybe who's participated, who's not, since the board might make it a little bit more difficult to see that, that is also available to you. So here I have two examples from our Star Talk program of Padlet boards that we created. This one on the left here, excuse me, is something called a sandbox. It's a more free-form use of like a discussion board. There's not as much structure to it, but it can still be very fun. It can be very free form. I've used these boards personally to kind of have like brainstorming sessions as like kind of a warm-up activity with students. That can also be a fun thing. Or just even as like a primer, if I want to get students more acclimated with the tool and using it in different ways, sometimes I might use a sandbox to kind of get them familiar with the platform in general. And then here on the right, we have a more structured activity. This is a 3-2-1 activity. So students were asked to write 3 things that they learned, 2 things that they still wanted to know from the lesson, and a question. that they still have. So again, you see like some text responses here, but you can also reply in video, in audio format. There's lots of different options with Padlet, which is really great. The second tool I'd like to highlight is called Pear Deck. This is, I think it's still been around for a long time, but it has changed its accessibility. So it's a little bit newer to me, but it's an interactive slide tool. So it allows you to create slides that are interactive for your students. And they can respond to them, they can interact with them, they can do lots of things with them, including like responding to text, multiple choice. You can even have them drawing or doing like draggable situations, which is a great way to capture kind of cognitive and affective engagement in real time as you're giving a lecture or in the middle of an activity. So students can share their thoughts or maybe a comprehension check without really speaking out loud or taking too much time out of the rest of the presentation. And Pear Deck is entirely free for teachers. There is a premium version, but you can do a lot with the free version. So I don't see it personally necessary to get the premium version. And the great thing about Pear Deck is that it works with Google Slides. So if that's something, a tool that you're already using, you can integrate Pear Deck right into slides that you've already created or presentations that you've already created. There's no need to do anything extra. You can just add these materials in, which makes, a lot less time consuming for us. So this is, again, a great way to provide like real-time feedback. I've seen teachers use these as like learning or comprehension checks, a means to just kind of break up the material if it's really like talking heavy from the teacher perspective one day, or even as something as like a brain break. Where we might be throwing a lot of information at our students and we see that they're kind of starting to disengage. We might give them like a fun, like lower cognitive load activity to kind of bounce them back. And we can see that kind of here. Right here, we have a slide using the drawing feature to allow students to draw the fruits that they're learning the vocabulary for. I've used this a few times. It is very fun. Students really, really like the drawing aspect. And it doesn't take that much time. So even if they are the most gifted artists and they really, really want to dry it out, it doesn't take too much time away, which is great. We have another example here. We have a situation where they can type in the different parts of the weather that are going on. So each individual student can type and then you can see all of their responses on your screen, which is really incredible. So to kind of wrap up, technology can offer some incredible flexibility in our classroom for our students. It allows students to engage with our learning content in different ways, whether that be through text, voice, collaboration, video. It really just makes the learning experience a bit more adaptable to their individual needs and their engagement levels at any given time. And by creating these low stakes environments and providing a lot of choice, technology can help reduce some effective barriers that students might be feeling, like anxiety, which allows students to feel more comfortable and confident in their learning. Like I said, these tech tools, they can support all kinds of different engagement, whether that be cognitive, behavioral, affective, or social, which can encourage meaningful participation, increased willingness to communicate. And this participation can happen across a lot of different contexts and interactions. The key thing to remember here is that, engagement, we want it to go, engagement is more than just going through the motions. For an activity. It's about actively participating in ways that benefit each learner. So this increased engagement that we can see with technology directly impacts a student's willingness to communicate. As students gain confidence in their ability to communicate in varieties of ways, they're more likely to regularly and actively communicate in class. Finally, With accessible free tools like Padlet and Pear Deck, we can track engagement, provide timely feedback, and create new opportunities for students to interact with our material and each other. The really key thing here is exploring the tools and understanding which tools are right for you and your students in your particular context. Thankfully, we have, lots of different options to choose from. It's really just about choosing the best one for you and your students. So I will stop here. I will say a big thank you when my thank you slide comes up. I also, on the thank you slide, on my final slide, I have a QR code. Oh no, you guys can't see it. I will fix that right now. The QR code will take you to a copy of these slides, and also a link to the tech tools that I mentioned. I will just briefly, since I'm still sharing, show you that tool or that resource. So this is just a giant spreadsheet that a lot of different language teachers have come together to create. It has the tool, a link to it. It has some sort of categorization. The categorization has changed a lot as, more people add. But we like to ask people to at least put some reasons they really enjoy the tool, maybe like what specifically engages their students, what kind of monetization model the tool uses. So is it free? Is it paid? Is it that freemium kind of in between? And how easy it is to use. It's separated into these different categories, and a lot of them do have additional notes or maybe even some like videos on how to use them, or just like tips and tricks from the teachers that have added them. So I'll go ahead and pop that in the chat while I fix my QR code for all of the resources. But I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen for now while I fix that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay, thank you so much, Jatana. That is very useful, very valuable. And then about gamification, yes, I have heard about that, and now I'm so lucky to see you because I think you're the expert of gamification. Okay, so thank you, Jatana, for the presentation. We will now move into the question and answer session. For those who wish to ask a question, of course, I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of questions and then maybe you can ask. Please use the raise hand feature or type your question in the chat. We will select several questions for our speaker to answer according to the time. And congratulations to Jatana because the time is just exactly right when you finish the presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, so to all bapak-bapak and ibu-ibu, if you have question, please type your question on the chat, or maybe you can have a raise hand. Let me check if there's question already on the chat. Okay. So let me view.
I just fixed the QR code. So here's the way to get the slides. And if you missed the link, it's also there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So is there any questions? Maybe you want to discuss about something because Peer Deck and then Jamboard and then Padlet, it's a very useful tools, of course, yeah, and make the students engage. So maybe you want to ask more about the tools or more about the technology. Let me check again. Okay.
I also created, in case you all are curious, just like a sample Padlet board if you've never used it before and want to do a little exploring. I'll go ahead and pop that in the chat as well.
Okay, so maybe there's no questions, Jatana, on the chat as well. And I think, oh, okay, we have one from Mr. Muhammad Nur Hadiyat. can you please unmute yourself and you can ask? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, am I speaking clear?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
All right, so I'm so sorry I cannot turn on my video because my internet connection is quite unstable. And well, straightforward to my questions. I'm teaching for senior high school students. So, Katana, probably, do you have any tips to strategize of using any mobile devices during teaching? Because, like the application or the website that you introduced to us, some of them have been quite familiar, like Padlet. I also use Padlet during my teaching because it's easy to use, but sometimes they try to trick me, like they sometimes open social media or probably they scroll off their account or anything, or probably they texting to their friends or anything. So I don't know, maybe you have tips for me, yeah, myself, to how to strategize this, how to keep watching out of my students, keep focused during my teaching in the classroom. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's definitely a tricky balance, right? Especially with mobile devices, there's no way to control really like what they're doing on them. So I think if it kind of depends on like how bad the problem is, right? If you're really, really worried about it, if everyone's just like totally off task all the time, I would probably suggest using tools that don't require their participation on the mobile phone. There are like a lot of tools that you can use that embed into your presentations, and you can upload their interactions or things like that on your own. So you're still integrating the technology, but maybe in a more like controlled way, if that makes sense. But I also like to use those kind of situations as an opportunity for differentiation. So often what we like to do is break down our goals in the language classroom. And so, people finish things a little bit faster, or maybe do things at a different pace, or maybe just like more interested in some things than other things. So that might be an instance where like you have a main goal, but there's like extra little, I call them like side quests that they can do that hopefully will keep their attention a little bit more. That's where I like to really differentiate how they can interact with the material. Maybe I want them to respond in text in one area, but then I want them to use GIFs and images in another place, or find a recipe or link it, something like that there. So differentiation can be a really good tool in those moments. But there's also a lot of great opportunities to kind of use these tools in more controlled ways. So maybe instead of like having a Padlet where everybody's responding all at once, you have a sandbox on your screen and you can input things that way and then share that as a reference for everyone later. So one of the great things about these tools is how flexible they are and how you can use them differently. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the questions, Mr. Mohammed, and thank you so much for the explanation, Jatana. Let's go to Mr. Karyadi. Yeah, please, Mr. Karyadi, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miss Vika. And hello, good evening, Miss Jatana. Is it correct? Sorry if I'm wrong. Oh
Yeah,
yes. Oh, all right. Thank you so much. So I'm over the moon to see you actually, Miss Chetana. So it is, the topic is very interesting and awesome. So I have two questions. The first is I have a problem. I have a problem with my student when they want to join. It is about the connection, and also we need actually more time to they need, yeah, more time to join for example, the Padlet or the Pardex. So of course they it takes time, and yeah, it takes time. And the second question is, do you think Pear Deck or Padlet actually what's that are able to are able to have like a speaking skill? We can conduct this in a speaking skill. Okay, so I think that's all things. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, learning these tools or like what we call digital literacy, that's a skill, right? That's not something people just know how to do. So it can be really tricky to kind of integrate tools for the first time in the classroom. So often what I like to do is if I know I want to do an activity with one particular tool in my next class, I'll try and take a few minutes, maybe like the last 10 or 15 minutes of class, the one before, and do a little introduction tool to it. So I can help troubleshoot with the students while they're still there. They can learn how the tool works. They can kind of use each other to figure out things as well and troubleshoot. And then when it actually comes to doing the language activity, they're a lot more well equipped for the situation. And I'm a little bit more well equipped too, since I kind of saw what issues they were having with it and where and why, what was going on. So when that's possible, I like to try and do that, but that's not always possible. A lot of these really big tools like Padlet and Pear Deck, they're also really great with resources on how to use their own tools. Most of them have YouTube videos that also can kind of help with that troubleshooting or just how to get started with the tools. So if I'm not able to kind of help troubleshoot or give that initial interaction with the tool myself, I like to have students maybe watch those as they're, preparing to do an activity or something like that, even as a transition. I find that also kind of helps them have a little bit more control and kind of can offset some of the troubleshooting as well. So that's kind of my suggestion with the issues that can come with technology. And what was the second question that you had? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the second question is, do you think Pear Deck and Padlet actually can be can be I mean what's that can be conducted in a speaking skill. So a speaking skill. So do you have any examples? Okay,
Yeah.
when the students use this this kind of tech Padlet or maybe the Pear Deck, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the great things about Padlet especially is you can have them record voice notes and you can have them record videos as their responses. So often what I like to do when I'm either starting or ending kind of a module or a general big lesson is I either like to have them start off speaking and using the video or the voice option to kind of get them prompt or primed to talk about the subject, or I like to use it at the end of a lesson or end of a topic to really get them kind of reflecting while using the target language. So I can post a question. There's always a title to the Padlet, so you can make that your question or you don't have to. But sometimes I will ask the question in a voice note and have my students like reflect and either provide a video or an audio response on Padlet. So there can be that more speaking component as well. I haven't used any speaking kind of or like audio situations on Pear Deck, but I know Padlet for sure uses the audio component.
Okay, thank you so much. Amazing, Ms. Jatana. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the question, Mr. Kayadi and also Jatana. But I think we still have more questions since we still have more time. Thank you. This is from Miss Dia Trisnamayanti. Thank you, Ms. Jatana. You mentioned prior about gamification. And the question is, what type of game do your students most engage with?
That is a tough question. I've taught a lot of different age groups. I've taught as young as 4 years old and as old as 70. So a lot of different games, a lot of different tools appeal to a lot of different age groups. I think when you pick your game tools, it's really important to consider their age, their like developmental abilities, and their familiarity with gaming in general, and technology tools. So if I have a classroom of particularly maybe like younger kids or maybe like teens, maybe like 10 to 13 years old, I really like situations like Gimkit, because they allow for a lot of like team building opportunities. And they allow for, they're playing as an individual, but you see all of the results of it as a classroom together. And I feel that that really keeps them like on task, and really engaged with the activity, and they feel the challenge of it. But with my older students, they really like Genially and that kind of escape room format that those games like to take. And those are really great for like more independent learning opportunities. So if they're at the level and, developmental age to, be able to have that more independent work through like an escape room situation, I know my students really enjoy those as well.
Okay, thank you for the explanation, Jatana. That's very well explanation. I hope it answers Miss Dia. And then let's go to the next one. From Miss Uun Mauna, saying wonderful explanation. And then this is also from Miss Wina Dwina. Thank you, Miss Jatana, an epic and captivating webinar theme. And the questions again from Mr. Ahmad Japar. How do you control a situation where students are more motivated to play the game instead of focusing on the lesson being taught?
Yes, this can be a little bit tricky, right? This is often a situation I sometimes see in like Gimkit if they're using it independently, because depending on the game template that you choose, the learning or the actual content of it can feel a bit secondary to the actual, experience in general. So if you have a level of control over the actual design of the game, I think it's really important to make sure that those learning aspects are the things that drive the game, are the things that make the student progress or continue through the game, rather than as a secondary situation. So like things like Kahoot are really good at that. You can't get any points, you can't move on until you've actually engaged with the content itself. You can also make Genially like that. I think it really just takes a little bit of like creative design when it comes to the games themselves, and just making sure every opportunity you can, you're checking to make sure, is my material at the forefront or is it the game that's at the forefront right now?
Okay, thank you so much, Jatana, for the explanation. Let's go to the next questions. From Mr. Tengku Hanafi, thank you for Ms. Nina as well. The question is how to overcome students who have limited vocabulary and their engagement to study is still low. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where a lot of the flexibility of tech tools can come in. Often with my younger learners, or maybe just like lower proficiency learners, I like to do a lot of like non-verbal checks. So if I'm on Zoom, that might mean using a reaction to tell me how they're feeling, or if they understand, give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down, or a happy face or a smiley face or a sad face. So that's a way that, you can kind of check in with those students without, needing any sort of extra vocabulary or, using their native language if that's something that you're trying to avoid. Other like tools like Padlet allow for like really intense images. So like you can have GIFs and just pictures in general, so they can interact with you that way as well. They can include sounds. Like I know one person, I did a check and they made a sound and it went wah wah wah, which indicated to me that they didn't really like what was going on or felt like they were confident in what was going on. So I think technology can give you a lot of ways to interact with your students like that, and that's how I like to kind of utilize that space where maybe we don't have the words to communicate what we want to say, but I still need to know what's going on.
Okay, thank you so much. So I hope it's answered for the questions, Mr. Tengku. Now let's go to the next questions because time is almost 3 minutes. Yeah, so we still have 7 more minutes. Maybe we can go to the next question from Miss Sudarmi. I teach at limited signal school. Do you have suggestion of a tool that appropriate with my school condition? Because of also this is because of the signal problem. And maybe you have any suggestion? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some tools where you can create an activity or a game or whatever it is, and you can actually download it onto your computer. Those are situations where, you kind of have to facilitate the interaction with the tool a little bit more. But it's a way to make sure that even if you don't have signal, you still have it downloaded on your computer so you can still use it. A lot of the tools too, they also give you some sort of like paper or like printed version as well. So if you're having signal issues, you can use that printed version as kind of like a backup. There's a few tools on the spreadsheet in the notes section that specifically say that they're really good for those situations. So I would check out the spreadsheet for that.
Okay, thank you so much. So yes, spreadsheet, yeah, or maybe printed games like we can provide for as a backup. Thank you so much, Chetana. And I think the same questions that will be asked from Miss Santi Pangabean. Integrating technology with the learning is effective enough to engage the students. And this is, I think, the same question as Miss Sudarmi, yeah, because of the limited internet connection. What kind of suggestion that we can use the games, or do you have some technology that can be used in a class with limited resources? So the question from Ms. Santi is, can we still use technology even though we have limited internet connection? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, like I said, the good thing about technology is there's so many different kinds and there's so many opportunities. The real challenge is finding out what works for you and your students in your particular context. A lot of them do have kind of like an analog integration or a print integration. Off the top of my head, I think WordWall is pretty good at this. They often give you like a print version and a way to kind of simulate it in a non-digital space as well. I also really like gamification principles. Often people think that that is something that you can only do online and with the internet, but that is absolutely not true. You can have gamification principles anywhere. So if you're looking for another way to kind of integrate these things, gamification principles would also be a really great option as well, if tools aren't working for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chetana. Maybe will be the last questions from Ms. Ati. In my classroom setting, most of the time students are engaged when doing the task in group work, but not during the learning session. How to enhance, this is the question, how to enhance engagement among students during the learning session?
Yeah, I think this is like a great opportunity for something like Pear Deck. Since you can integrate these slides like right into your maybe lesson learning session, it's a great way to kind of chunk or like break up the content. So maybe when there's like a natural transition or a natural pause, you can add a Pear Deck. So they can draw or they can interact with the material in like a different way rather than just kind of sitting there. I also really like Slido because that also can be integrated into PowerPoint presentations, and you can do really easy comprehension tracks, but there's also a running question and answer section that you can have. So if a student has a question, or maybe they just need to say something or have a comment on what you guys are talking about, they can add that and it'll pop up on the screen. So that can be another way to make sure that, they have opportunities to kind of stay engaged even in those like more dense learning sessions.
Okay, yes. Well explained. And then, since we still have 2 more minutes, maybe we can have one more question, Jatana. This is from Mr. Prima Kismaningdia, Mr. or Miss Prima. Using technology in the classroom can engage students effectively. In this case, we let them to use their cell phones. Do you have suggestions? How can we make sure that they use cell phones for lesson only, not change the focus on other interesting things with cell phones? So maybe how can we trust the students to use the cell phones only for the lesson instead of looking for something else? Yeah. Thank you. That's the question. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I kind of mentioned before, there's tools that we can have that require teacher facilitation of the use of the tools. So if we absolutely cannot use our cell phones with our students, then that's an opportunity to still use that tech, but maybe in a more moderated way. But also there are tools now that if they do require that like mobile use from students, they are a little bit more locked down. So it's a lot harder to get in and out of like the app or the website while you're doing an activity. Also pacing can help with this. If there's too much lag time to answer a question or between questions or between interactions, that might, give more of an opportunity for a student to get disengaged and want to go look at something else. So maybe tracking like the pacing of the questions that you're presenting and opportunities for them to answer in a particular amount of time might help.
Okay, thank you so much, Jatana, and it's on time, right on time. It's time, I think, for us to stop the question and answer session. Maybe if you still have more questions, do not worry too much, because Pak Dadan and all the Kelas Kreatif Indonesia team will collect all the questions and we will give you the answer. Okay, thank you so much for the interesting questions and discussion, and also the lovely presentation from Jatana. Very useful and very fruitful tonight. Very, very valuable. Now it seems like we have to get ready, to all of you, to have a virtual group photo. Please make sure that you are visible on a camera and smiling. Okay, and then after that we will proceed to the closing session. To Pak Dadan, can you please? Yeah.
Okay, before we start our group photo session, I would like to say thank you very much, Jatana, for the presentation.
Yeah.
And then we have shared all resources to the WhatsApp group and can be revisited by the teachers in Kelas Kreatif Indonesia later. Yeah. And then thank you very much for the list of the tools. I believe we are going to explore many of the tools and implement that in our classroom. Okay, Ibu and Bapak, now is 2010. So would you please turn on the camera? I might only take photos on the first slide because nobody turned on the camera on the second slide. Yeah. Okay, I will count from 1 to 3. Yeah, from 1 to 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Thank you. Yeah, Bufika already.
Thank you so much, Pak Dadan, and thank you so much for Jatana. Thank you so much to all of you for coming tonight, and we hope we can see you again for the next webinar. And be healthy and be happy always. See you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Katana. Thank you, Pak Dadan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jatana. Thank
everyone.
you, Bufika. Ibu Bapak, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pak Dadan.
Thank you.
See you on the next.
See you on Wednesday, Ibu Bapak. We have another session on Wednesday on visible thinking. Yeah.
See you, Pak Dadan.
Yeah, Jatana, thank you very much once again. Thank you.
you.